For me, I see self-betrayal a lot in negative self-talk with my clients, right? And so when we have this negative talk in our heads, no one knows what we definitely do. We all have it. It's okay. But I find that we're constantly betraying our true nature, our true essence, right? Sure, we all have bad days and we're not always happy and perky, but it doesn't mean we need to go down a spiral of I'm not good enough. I'm not as smarter than her. I'm never going to get there. And so I see this pattern of negative self-talk often with my clients. And one of the ways that I like to help them is to shift that whole pattern of or even recognizing that it happens. Because for so many people, it's such a natural thing that you don't even recognize that you're doing it, but it's a huge way. A second way that I see with my clients a lot too is procrastination, right? Like, I'll do it. I'll get there. It's on my list tomorrow. Procrastination, it sounds funny because when we talk about self-betrayal, it sounds like such a big and heavy word, but what other way than not honoring your needs now, right? Like, why put it off? Why not do it now? Why not work on that goal now? Why not go to law school now? Why all these things? And so I see the negative self-talk and procrastination are two of the biggest ways that I see self-betrayal come up with my clients.
So that reminds me, Natalie, of that fear of being afraid of success or failure, right? So it sounds like you're working with a lot of corporate people for sure, right? How are you, Melvis, seeing this with your quantum healing clients?
What I'm seeing with my clients is from years of self-betrayal, of not listening to ourselves, we lose sense, we disconnect from our intuition and our inner voice. So a lot of people feel like well, I don't have, my intuition's not good, I'm not intuitive. And it's not that, because we all have that within ourselves, but it's more that you've allowed that to be lost by not using it, because you put yourself on the back burner so much that you kind of have lost that connection. So I find it in that chronic indecisiveness, like not knowing what you want, not knowing what you feel, because you were never given the opportunity to have a voice. And also like inauthenticity in general. People that are like, I don't know who I am, I don't know why I'm here. So, it definitely affects my clients, and they come in with a lot of these issues.
Yeah, and while you were speaking, one of the things that I remember about a lot of my clients, because I do see a lot of clients that are going on this spiritual journey, is the self-betrayal by tapping into different energies that limit what they can do. And I'll give you an example. There is a perception in some of the spiritual practices that I practice where if you work with an entity, let's say, I don't know, entity Y, that entity doesn't like this type of person or doesn't like that type of person, right? So now you accept that belief as part of your belief too. And then you limit yourself to, oh no, I'm supposed to be a virgin because I work with so-and-so, or I'm supposed to do this because I'm not supposed to be hanging out with people that are lesbian or so, because this entity is against that. So that is something that happens in the spiritual community, and I get to see with my clients because of the journey that they're taking. And then to work on releasing that belief sometimes can be like, oh, and now I am detaching myself from this spiritual side of me. So who do I become when I do this? And obviously it's a beautiful process, because then you become who you're supposed to be. But in the process of that, there is a lot of doubts.
A lot of confusion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something that both of you, Amy and Victoria, you mentioned, the saying yes and people pleasing. Another part that I see too, and I teach this to almost all my clients, is the art of saying no. And they're like, well, I can't say no. And I'm like, well, really, you're saying you can't, but is that a choice, or is that an obligation, or is that just really how you see it? So reminding them that when we say no to external things, we're saying yes to ourselves. And that is like the best part of getting over the self-betrayal piece of things. And the guilt, I think, Victoria, you mentioned this, right? Like sometimes when we say no, we feel guilty about not showing up or not doing a thing, and working through those things, because I believe that we don't need to feel guilty for saying no to something. If we're truly not in it and our authentic self is like, my energy's not there today, I don't really feel like doing that, I don't have the time. We're human. It's okay to say no. And I love to remind clients and listeners today that it's okay. And there's different ways of saying no, right? You don't have to say, well, F you, bye. You can literally say, I don't have the energetic space for that today, but can we talk about it next week? Right? One example of how to get through that.
Very lovely. Yes.
I was going to say, I love that you brought that up, Amy, because it does get confusing when we start placing these boundaries around us that we never had before. Right? People have expectations because we've set those expectations.
Right.
So when we try to shift them and change them, they're like, but wait a minute, you always pick me up after work. Why aren't you here today? Right? So communicating those, being accepting of those. But one thing, Victoria, when you were talking, I realized sometimes, and this happened to me too, we're not aware that we're betraying ourselves, right? And we're self-sabotaging. For me, when I was younger, with dating men, I was so afraid of getting left or dumped that I would already start going through like, well, if this doesn't happen by this date, then I'm going to just dump him. And this whole elaborate thing. But I honestly wasn't even aware that that was like me doing that until years later, right? And late 30s, like, but I was sabotaging every relationship that I was in. And then wondering, I'm like, well, why can't I keep someone? Well, because I was doing this. So that level of awareness too, right? And it's okay that we're not aware, but all the four of us are here to help you with this podcast, starting with this, to get aware. Like, it's okay that we have these behaviors and there are ways to shift past them.
Yeah. So you're very strategically letting them go.
Yeah, and obviously it's not like an overnight thing. Like, oh, okay, great. I was self-sabotaging. Let me change that. No, it's work. It's a lot of work, and it is possible. I love that you said.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just gonna quickly say, I love that you said the word selfish, Amy, because a lot of people, when we start prioritizing ourselves and saying no, there is this perception that we're becoming selfish. But for me, and as a coach, I say this all the time, it's not selfish when it's taking care of yourself. Self-care is not selfish. And there's a huge distinction, right? If you're always saying no and never show up for people, sure, maybe you're being selfish. But every once in a while, when you're learning how to navigate this, it's okay. It's okay to like take care of your needs first. And then when we take care of our needs first, we're in a better position to take care of everyone else anyway. So I just wanted to make a point of that, because the word selfish nowadays gets thrown around so much, but it's okay to take care of ourselves.
Well, that could be a compliment, right? As well, if your friends that are still in the old version of who they are, like the same version, and they're telling you that you're selfish, sometimes those negative compliments can be a good compliment when we reflect on them. And that's beautiful. Natalie?
I love that. I do 2 exercises. The first one, I start with literally having them make a list of their needs, right? I love to swim. Walking every day, a list of their needs. And then the second column is, how often do you check that list, that need off, right? And maybe not all of them are daily things, but I have them look at like what their needs are, how often they're met, and when they're not met, the last column, what happens, right? So it's like coming outside of yourself to see where you are with this. And I love this exercise for people. The second one that I love to do is getting to the underlying belief that they truly have. Right? Like, why are you continuing to self-sabotage? Why are you betraying yourself? Like, what are you truly believing about yourself? Like, what values do you think you have, or what values are you not aligning with? And let's get to the bottom of what's really going on. And the combination of those two works wonders for people. I mean, again, this isn't overnight work, but it's like a really good start to helping them set up some healthy boundaries. I just want to remind everyone that it is okay to say no. Right. I know that it seems difficult at first, and there are all these expectations, external expectations, and it's okay. especially when you're communicating, right? That's the thing. If you say, I cannot do this today because, and you don't always have to give examples, but I think at the beginning, when we're trying to get some of our power back, like I think Victoria and Amy both said that, it's a work in progress. Like over communicating helps when you're going through this journey and trying to take some of that energy back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely important to give yourself permission to put yourself first at times.
And also fun.
Say that again.
Sometimes it's fun to just put yourself first, right? Like there's some days that it's like I call them no electronic days, and I just don't answer anything. And when I don't do that, I'm like outdoors, riding my bike, going to the pool. It's fun. It can be fun too, right? Like taking some time for ourselves to replenish, and yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be so serious, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, I know.